Welcome back to The Pride Has Spoken. It's Pride Month, of course, and as you already know, all month we're chatting with and celebrating LGBTQIA plus survivors. My name is Matt Scott, and I am here with the one, the only, the iconic survivor legend and hero, in my opinion, Evvie Jagoda, Dr. Evvie Jagoda. Evvie, how are you doing?
Oh, Matt, only you can make me this smiley and energized at 8 in the morning after landing at a flight so late last night. So I'm so thrilled to be here with you,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to set up this wonderful interview that you and Grace did.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, wonderful to see you. Right back at you for 8 a.m. And yes, like so far, we've talked with Carla, we've talked with Hi. I think phenomenal conversations and interviews. And Evvie, do you know who this week's conversation is with? I mean, there's the title of the episode, but you haven't seen that yet.
I do know. I know that today or, yesterday, you and Grace spoke with the Missy Byrd
Ooh.
from Survivor season 39.
Hmm.
And I'm so excited to hear this interview because I know in particular that talking to Missy was something you were extremely excited to do when you were preparing the list. You were like, let's get Missy, let's make it happen. And
Yeah.
I would love if you could, share with me, share with the people, why this was so important to you. And yeah, I'd love to hear more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and I really I love our group of survivors in this. I mean, all of the Pride Has Spoken people who've come in, but this has been such a great group of folks. And Missy, for me, not only in terms of being like another Black person, a Black queer person, is someone who resonates, but I think for me, what was so fascinating about Missy, and I think we saw echoes of this with Bryce actually, which he talked about last year in his interview with you, Evvie, is that Missy comes off one way on the show and a completely different way outside of the show. Missy is emotional in real life. Missy is fun. Missy loves pasties and cannabis, and that those things come up a lot in the beginning of this interview. Not
Amazing.
pastries, not pastries. That
No.
was something that Grace had to we had to clarify. Pastries are great too, but pasties, which Missy defines for those who don't know, in case you're not aware, um, and shares her collection. And so,
Oh
like for
my god.
me, I'm like this person who we're getting in real life, who like I follow on social media, who I see constantly posting pasty pics. Like it is a complete contrast to what we've gotten on the show, and that's why this series is here to give people a chance to like share who they are and define who they are. I think especially with that era of Survivor, maybe the late 30s or maybe just the 30s in general, we got a lot of strategy talk and a huge focus on strategy and not on the human characters. And I feel like by the time that we came around to your season with the new era, quote unquote, like there was more of that humanity represented on the show. And actually, that kind of leads me to a question for you, Evvie. Ooh, right off the top.
Let's go.
Um, but like, yeah, you of course saw the show in before the new era, and that's what you were sort of walking into or potentially expecting to walk into. And there was like the diversity initiative that was coming out, no pun intended. But I guess like my question for you is, did you expect to have your story shared in the ways that you did, or
Mm.
I don't know, was it surprising to like even be recognized as a human in your identities to some extent on the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that and obviously season 41 was the first season of the new era, right? So I didn't have any framework of what the show was going to be like from that point. But you know, I think what was clear from a lot of the seasons before is
Hmm.
that some people got those full human stories and some people really didn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, and honestly, I think that's still true in the new era.
Hmm.
And of course, some of that is going to be, how far you go in the game. But someone like Missy is a perfect example. She was a huge character in the strategy of the game,
Yeah.
and yet not so much in the human aspects of the game. In a season that was filled with lots of different human struggles, right? And so for me, I really went in with the attitude of like, people better freaking leave this show knowing who I am,
Yeah.
knowing that I'm a queer person, especially. Like, that was the number one thing that I was really trying to put out there, is like, I'm queer and I'm happy. Those were really the things that that was the message I was really trying to bring on the show. And so I hammered that in my interviews, and obviously, of course, they still had the option of what to include. But I'm really grateful that they did include that. But I think it seems like in some seasons, including in some of the new era seasons, but especially in like season 39, for example, there can only be, it's like Elaine was the queer woman. You know what I mean?
Right,
Even though
exactly.
you have Missy as well, and they were even friends, and like that could be something that was talked about more. And I don't know if Missy talks about this, but I remember in some post interviews, like her saying that like her and Vince had a moment where they like talked about their shared queer or like coming out and like in their families and communities or something like this, and that them both thinking that was gonna be a big moment on the show, and it wasn't there at all. And I think we have this abundance of queer people on the show, even in season 39. I mean, I think that's one of the best things about that season, is it was actually a really diverse cast. But if you don't actually get to hear the full stories of these people, then you lose some of that. And I do think that is still a thing in some of these new era seasons. You'll have there's, as we know, like as there's 6 queer people on season 44. I don't think we heard about the queerness of half of them. Particularly the women. And that's a bummer. And it's like, of course, people are more than their queerness. People are going on the show and want to represent whatever sides themselves they want. But I just really genuinely hope that what people want shown of them gets to be shown. And that's not always possible. They're making a TV show. I understand that. But that's why we're here also, to get to be celebrating that piece of people, whether or not it was a big aspect of their story on the shows. But it is, the beautiful thing of having this representation is getting to see, like, there's all sorts of queer people on these shows. And I think definitely the highlight of some of these, like in 44, we had some really big characters who were like gay men, and that got to be, we saw Jam Jam and Josh, talking about that side of themselves, and that was amazing and wonderful, and I'm so glad we had that. And there were other queer people there too, and that didn't get to be as much of a part. And I think the same kind of dynamics happened with Missy. So I'm just super glad that we have her and get to hear more about her full personality and full story here.
Wow. Thank you, Professor. Look at
Yes.
that.
That was
I always feel like
8 a.m.
That's 8 a.m. Survivor thoughts. It's beautiful.
Yes.
And I think the other piece of this, like we've talked about queer women on the shows not being as represented, which has definitely been a pattern. But I think with Missy, what's so fascinating is, she's Black, queer, a woman, a veteran, a brain tumor survivor, like someone who around the time of the show especially was experiencing like not having a home. And like there's just so many levels to Missy that I think are fascinating, but there's also just so much joy and love that Missy holds. And I also am like really, one thing that we get into in the conversation a little bit is just like the portrayal and the hate. Missy did receive hate mail after the season for a variety of reasons. One, just kind of being this quote unquote villain to some folks, but also there was like the entire situation, which we touch on and don't rehash, but just giving Missy space to reflect on like being so many years, like 5 or 6 or 5 years older, and like beyond that season. I think it's so fascinating that Missy in her early 20s, Missy fighting for $1 million is one thing, and for me it also just hit home the point that like I probably will never know the experience of fighting for $1 million on TV and like what that does. There were some echoes in this interview of the conversation you had last year with Zeke, and just about Survivor and how that interact, like how we interact with Survivor in terms of like bringing in real world issues. This was also something that came up with the conversation in High and Romeo. And then, you know, again, I mentioned just the fun stuff like the pasties, the Denver gay scene. I mean, you know, fun for whoever, you know, I'm just saying whatever. You know,
Sounds fun
we
to me. Sounds
yeah,
fun
I
to
was
me.
gonna say, but you know, I'm not putting anyone in a box here. Do what you want. Love what you love. That should be the saying that we integrate. Love what you love, and love is love too. But and also this idea of Survivor, the gay season came up again. So we're seeing a theme. Jeff Probst, I know you're listening. Make it happen. Let's do this thing. But Evvie,
Yes.
before we get into this conversation with Missy, anything you just want to throw out there? Like anything, any words of wisdom for people before they dive in and
Oh
listen?
man. Yeah, I am coming off of a work retreat that I was at for several days, and I just have been and you and I talked about this in our interview on Pod Friends,
Yeah.
how, you know, often queer people, we have this we have to put on like different versions of ourselves in different places. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I was really like in work persona mode, which
Hmm.
like subconsciously becomes a little straighter, a little maybe, yeah, a little straighter vibes. But I was really pushing against that all weekend,
Yeah.
bringing up topics that people sometimes knew what I was talking about, sometimes didn't, and sometimes I pushed myself to explain things that I wouldn't normally talk about. And I am feeling good about that. So I encourage, and it was not unwelcomed. It's just not things that people know about.
You
So
know what? I
yeah.
love this though. I love that because I think it relates well to this conversation and sets us up well in that, like, yeah, like it's so tough showing up in spaces, but seeing the different representation, like seeing Missy as representation, seeing you as representation. I think of my own work travels and things, and I'm like, I feel that much more willing and strong in like being out and proud and like representing my queerness and answering those uncomfortable questions because of people like you, Evvie,
uh,
and also people like Missy Byrd. So let's get into the conversation.
let's do it.
All right, everybody. It is Matt Scott, and it is my honor and Grace Leader's honor to welcome a woman who is charismatic and clever, dynamic, and decently dope. Some might say decidedly dope. I would say decidedly dope. Currently in her strength era, please welcome Missy Byrd. I had to add like your last name in for the effect.
I love that intro. Thank you.
Oh,
Wow. I'm really
thank you.
happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and it's amazing to have you as part of the Pride Has Spoken. And Grace and I are excited just to dive into you and your story. Obviously, you're part of Survivor season 39, which at this point feels like it was forever ago. I guess five
Yeah.
seasons ago, which is significant, and a
Mhm.
pandemic ago. But there we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to start us out. Grace and I really see this as like a celebration of LGBTQ plus survivors. And I think something that's especially interesting with you is like, you know, and any survivor is that there's definitely always a perception that people come away with from the show itself. But I don't think that ever does justice to who you as a person, as a human are. So we want to ask Missy, big question. Who are
Ooh.
you? Who?
Wow. Who am I? Uh, I like to think that I'm a human that's just pretty happy,
Mm.
uh, pretty laid back, pretty easygoing. I smoke more weed than not, and I feel like I laugh pretty often. I think a big perception of me from the show was that I was like very stern, like very militaristic. And I think we all have our layers or our sides. I was in the military for 6 years, so I definitely can turn it off and on. But if I'm not in the military or if I'm not playing for $1 million, I'm just chill. I like to wake up, work out, and relax.
There we go. There we go. What does like overall, just to like build on the, so you mentioned like wake up, work out, relax. I don't know. I kind of know that there's a little bit of an answer to this, but like, are there any exciting projects or things that you're working on currently? One, I'm thinking of your home, but just in general, yeah, what else are
Definitely.
you up to most often these days?
So right now I'm working on this really cool project. I'm trying to figure out how to dose myself with this coconut oil.
Oh
It
my
has
gosh.
like an ounce of weed in it, and I'm slowly like getting the formula down to like how much I can eat to like really feel a consistent high throughout the day. So that's been, I feel like this right here is revolutionary. It's like the guy who invented the candle to tell time. I feel like
Oh
that's
my
where I'm at with
gosh.
this project. And I brought my house last May. So I've owned this house for a year now. Home
Congratulations. Yeah.
ownership,
Mhm.
thank you so much. Home ownership is way different than I ever would have thought. I kind of just like fell into it a little bit. And I bought it for me and my partner at the time, but I am now extremely single.
Ooh,
And so, yeah,
eligible.
eligible.
Yeah.
And so what I thought the house would be, it no longer is. And that just opened up a really cool path of creativity and ways that I could turn the house into something. Like this room is just where I film a lot of my content. I have a green screen right there.
Mm,
Um, the bedroom, I bought myself a king bed because I deserve a king bed.
Yes.
that's right.
And then in the living room, I just built this really cool entertainment system with this sexy, sleek gray tile. And I just could make love to that tile.
Oh my gosh.
In the backyard, Dom has this really amazing fire pit area that Wendell flew out and helped him build.
Yeah.
And every project in my home is based off of a friend who has done this project in their home. Because I want my house to tie in just all the friendship and all the love that I've felt and I've received. So the entertainment system belongs to my friend Jason. The fire pit area is going to be Dom's, and then I'm going to have a little basketball area that's going to be for Wendell. And
Wow.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
just really, it makes me really happy. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I just graduated from media school, and that was really cool.
Wow.
I love playing in
Congratulations.
games. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I love playing in the games, but I also wanted to see and understand how the camera work and the storyboarding works behind the camera. Because to play the ultimate game of chess, you have to understand every single piece. And so I figured media school would be really great.
Damn. There's
That's
so
a
much
lot.
there. Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's layered. Yeah. Where do you live also? Where are you currently living?
I am in Denver, Colorado, the
Denver,
gayest place to be.
Okay,
Oh,
so yeah, wow,
Wait.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the gayest place to be. Why is it the gayest place? Because I know you've like lived in different places. I live in Washington, D.C. I know you spent some time here and you've
Mhm.
been all over, but like, what is so gay about Denver? I was just having this conversation recently.
Did someone else agree that Denver was super gay?
No,
We
I
were,
don't.
we were chatting last week. Hai
Yeah.
said that New Orleans is not a gay city; it's a queer city, which is very
Okay.
interesting. So yeah, we've been talking about cities and how gay or queer they are. Yeah.
I think for me, Denver, and this could be like a time bias thing, but I went to college here. So
Okay.
my entire queer, gay, adult life has been here. The evolution of me really did start here.
Wow.
And it is like growing now. And I've lived in Madrid. Madrid is great. Chueca, that district, it is, I mean, as soon as you cross over the threshold, it is, you are like rainbows are coming out of you. I've never felt that before. And so that was really cool to live in.
Ooh.
I've lived in Seattle, I've lived in DC, and I think I found my really fun pockets where I found my people. But there is just something about the nightlife here in Denver that just feels very it's just home. It's all rainbows. It's just really beautiful. So you can start at one club, go to another, and every single one of them, you know people at each one. We don't have many. So I think we have one main street off of Colfax.
Yeah.
And when you're on that street, you're just home. You feel so safe. You feel so included. Last year, it's the 1 year anniversary of my pasties era where I just don't wear shirts anymore.
Uh-huh.
And it all started because of how safe and good I feel living here in Denver and just being myself. So I just have a lot of love and appreciation for Xfire, for Charlie's, for Titan. It's just home.
You're naming names, and I was just gonna ask for that. I have to. One, you mentioned your pasties era, which like I sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, why am I not a pasties person? Because I just love the idea of like like I take off my sweatshirt and everyone's like, oh no, Matt, no, I have the pasties, the decoration, the thought. It's like a reveal. Do you have a collection of pasties, like, and then are there different patterns? We've seen on Instagram. Oh my gosh, wait, Missy is getting up to get her paste. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I had a really cool night when a couple of weeks ago, and my friend had a rain stick and we were dancing around. We had just had a little bit of shrooms and we're all vibing. And I was like, this rain stick sounds amazing, right? Yeah. But what if I put all of Pasties Past on there? So these every single one of these is a pasty that like just I had a really good night with. Concerts, days out with friends, date nights. And it's just now just a collection of like just love. It's really cool. That's and awesome. I can like point them out like New Year's night or October when I dressed as Tarzan when I got back from the jungle. It's just cool.
I'm gonna completely show my ignorance here because I've been debating whether or not. But when I saw on the notes that Matt said we're gonna talk about your pasties, I was like, oh, I love baked goods. I love.
I love that.
I guess that maybe that's a good way of saying I'm gonna be the spokesperson for all the people who are like, I don't know what we're talking about. Which is now that I've Googled it, I do understand and I can see, and I'm like, oh yeah, from your Instagram. But do you want to just explain like what that means? Because I was sitting here being like so excited to talk about it. It's like baked. No, definitely. It's like England, these British pastries.
For tea time.
That's right.
I don't know where the first time I wore them, I think it was just like a celebration of like, wow, one, I'm single. I had been in a very long committed relationship for quite a while. And I think in that relationship and through a lot of therapy, I realized I put lots of myself away to conform to that relationship because I wanted it to work. And a couple of the parts of me that I had to kind of put away or exile were the goofy sides of myself or the very free, very outspoken sides. And so one of the very first times I went out with friends after my relationship had ended, I wanted to visibly express that freedom. And what other way than just like taking your shirt off? For me, like that is freedom. That is just like full expression of like who I am, to be able to go out and dance, like, I don't know, on the rooftops, you know? And so I saw some girls wearing pasties. Denver had just passed this new women don't have to wear coverings or anything on when you go out to bars. You can be naked. And I was like, wow, yes. And so I ordered one pair. I had a great day. And the next one was like, whoa, should I buy another one? So I bought one more. And I was like, whoa, let's buy in bulk. So then I bought like,
that's right.
50, have to. So then I bought like 50 sets. And all over Pride Month last month, I became known as the pasties girl because every time I went out, I would just take my shirt off. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And now I have a couple of friends who had always wanted to try that like freedom of expression. And now they have, because I'll carry around extra pasties in my pocket. And it's just become like a staple of my life now. I went on a date and the girl brought an extra pair of pasties in her pocket for me. And I have never felt so much love. Like, wow. Yeah. For my birthday coming up, it's July 1st. My friend gave me an album to put pasties in and also happy birthday pasties. So it's really just become a staple of life for me. It's just awesome. Like become a part of who I am.
Oh my gosh. Cool. I love this. I love this on so many levels, but because like maybe to tie it to like something deeper too, it's just, you said it like that. It's that self-expression and that opportunity to be more free. And I mean, we live in a world where literally as like Black queer people or as queer people in general, it's like squish yourself down, live in this box. And and it's just like, it's amazing to be able to push back. Actually, not only amazing, it's important to be able to push back against that.
So important.
It's like there's the deeper meaning to the pasties and everything else, which I love. I'm a fan. And I'm glad that you're like so like you're so I don't know, you just like really leaned into it full force too, and you understand it. And you mentioned therapy as a big part of that. You've mentioned like so much about where you are now and your home. I'm curious, like going back to whenever it was that you filmed Survivor. Again, I mentioned like roughly 4 years ago or so, 4+ years ago at this point. Like, where were you in life in contrast to like where you are now?
Oh, beautiful question. So right before playing Survivor, I found out that I had a brain tumor, and that was how I got noticed or picked up through casting. And I spent the last 2 years of my time in the military trying to really like recover from that brain tumor. It grew undetected for 8 months, and that was just the wildest time, truly, still of my life. And I was very young as that was happening, dealing with, am I dying? Is this what death feels like? And I think that happening at a young age was very maturing, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful for the experience. I'm thankful to be on the other side of that without the brain tumor. And it created this desire to live, which I thought that I had, just I did, you know, like I am alive. But no, thinking that you're gonna die and you have this long list of things that you never got to do or never will do, it ignited this fire that I still feel today. And every year, because of that, I'll make this very long bucket list, tumor bucket list, and I will check every single thing off that list every year, ever since my diagnosis.
Wow.
And so that was, Survivor was on that first tumor bucket list. And so getting to play was very huge. Going in though, very unstable. I had just left the military, still living in Seattle, but transitioning to DC. Or maybe I was already in DC because I moved in with my girlfriend to like train and get ready for Survivor. So I was just very in the wind, which, listen, before therapy, I thought I was just a backpacker. I thought I was just a nomad who loved to be on the move, who loved to be in the wind. But really, that was just me running from trauma, running from problems, and never actually staying still enough to come face to face with issues. If you're in a different city or in a different country every 3 days, not much catches up with you. And so you really do think that you're living what I thought was this freedom of expression, kind of like the pasties, but really it was just running. And so going into Survivor, I think, especially now that I've gotten to play another game very similar to Survivor, coming from this place of stability from my home and getting to come back to it, I think going into Survivor, very unstable home base, which made it that much harder to put myself into the game and be able to play. I feel like I played well and strategized well, but now that I've played another game coming from a stable home base and I know where my toothpaste is, I know where my toothbrush is, that freed up my mind. I can't even describe to you. It's like when your phone is too full of photos and it keeps telling you like delete them, but then now you're trying to take photos or post on Instagram with a clear empty phone. It felt like that. The weight of the world was totally gone in this new game, Fight to Survive, and I'm very excited to watch that one back.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think when you're, when you're just sort of like living in a space that like it is not like bad or like it's not like the worst, you're like fine, but then when you kind of get out of it and you look back, you're like, oh, I was just fine. I was not great. I was just fine. I think that's like so interesting perspective
Definitely.
you have. Yeah.
And the mindset going in was very very focused on playing the game, winning the game. And the second time around, obviously winning is great, competition is super great, but a part of going back in, and I think it was cool getting to play maybe 2 to 3 years after, so a little bit older too. This is a medicinal walk. I get to starve. I get to be out in the jungle. I get to ground. And so it was so cool to see the things that I valued going in, still wanting to play, still wanting to win and do well, but versus my list that I made going into Survivor. I just feel like I'm a little bit older, so it feels cool.
Yeah, I feel like we're alluding to it. This show that you're going to be that will be airing. You've obviously filmed it, but it will be airing. Fight to Survive. Do you want to talk a little bit about that because it's coming up? And I think an opportunity for people to get to see you play a show again.
Definitely. And I think it's very circular with Survivors. I think it'll always be difficult for me to talk about one without the other now, which I really love because I like circles. But Fight to Survive, it comes out August 3rd. Is going to be airing on Roku. And for this one, it is also back in Fiji, which is super cool. I felt like that was kind of a sign that I should go play. Because starving is not for many of us. And so to go back and start again, I really had to sit with that. In this game, it's very similar to Survivor in a lot of aspects, but then it also pulls in ties from the challenge. So if you think of Survivor and the challenge having a baby, this game in the jungle is what you will see. And I really learned a lot about myself and my survivor self in this game.
Yeah, I'm so, you talked about that first experience and going in and being so focused on winning, and I do think that's like really where I see such a contrast between who sort of looking at your Instagram and now what you've been talking about versus how I think you were portrayed in that show.
Yeah.
But one thing in particular, I think, we talked with Hai last week, and he talked about how queer women in particular are sort of, I feel like, the most potentially like underrepresented in terms of their queerness being embedded into their story. I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like how much it came up in your experience, like your like sort of edit of the show, but talking a little bit about how queerness played into you entering that show. We've asked a lot of times about like, coming out to your tribe mates and all these extra things that I think queer people sort of have to have, this extra layer of this like social game that because our society is heteronormative and all of this stuff, like it's just an extra, I think, barrier. Even if for some people, like we talked about Carla was like, no, I was cool, I just came in, I was like, this is who I am, and she felt like it really didn't impact her game. But I'm wondering what your experience was like. Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you. I think I tell a lot of my friends when I do my public speaking events, I am every minority. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I'm a veteran. And so these are all the underrepresented percentages of our country, of the world. And that is heavy. Every single one individually is a weight of its own, and there's like 7 of them. So it is extremely heavy, and I feel it constantly. It does affect. Survivor is a very intricate game, and if you go in, some people can walk into the game without as many stones already on their back, but when you go in carrying 6 or 7, that changes everything. You're already kind of drowning underwater and the game hasn't started yet, So it definitely affects how you play and how you move. And in terms of editing, I don't think it was ever openly said about anyone. Maybe Vince, I believe, maybe Vince. But for me, in my edit, if you just watch the show without any understanding of me as a human, you wouldn't come away knowing that I had a female partner at the time, which is very wild because it is ingrained in every aspect of how I live. It's all over me and my personality, but it was not something that was really discussed too much. And then in the same way that's why it's so important that we won this minority 50% representation of Survivor, because just like showing up on my season and only expecting to see 2 Black people, but I got 4, so that's awesome. You don't really expect to see other queer people on your tribe. You can't even factor that in. When other people, you may be able to factor in things that seem so insignificant. There probably are more surfers on your tribe than there are queer people. There are probably more librarians on your tribe. And it is just, it's very strange, very, very strange. And that does affect your numbers in the game or the different outlets of alliances that you can make.
Elaine was on your starting tribe as well, right? Was there I feel like it was part of Elaine's story, or maybe I might be misremembering that as well. But
I mean, I feel like maybe they brushed over it, but it wasn't like there wasn't much focus. And similar to, I mean, Vince had a little bit less airtime, unfortunately. But again, I felt like it was something we brushed over. And also, this was an era of Survivor. I also feel like that was very strategy heavy, and like for whatever reason we didn't get the human stories as much through the show, or like the emotion of people like you, including you, Missy, where it's like it just felt like we had like the gamers and the game bots and everyone's constantly strategizing, as opposed to like the human touching moments as much,
Definitely. I think overall our season didn't get much humanity, which definitely affects editing. And even to this day, there'll be some fans, fans of Survivor are passionate. And so that as you're walking down the street, I can always tell which human that is like staring at me. They're not staring in a way of like, I want to date you. It's like in a way of, I know you from Survivor. And it's a really cool, beautiful thing. It still happens to this day. And I love it. When it first started happening after the show, some people will walk up to me, and I'm sure a lot of Black players get this, unfortunately, because of the stereotype and how African American people are portrayed and perceived. But a lot of people will walk up to me like, whoa, you do smile. And that is just like mind blowing, because every human on the planet has smiled in their life. You know, it's almost impossible. It should be an impossible statement for someone to think, let alone say to another human. But because of the show and the way it was edited, you get no humanity. And a lot of times you really get no humanity of those Black players.
Yeah.
Jatia is so much more than a singular moment where someone triggered her, and then she fought back. And to only have that moment in time and for her to be put into a capsule like that, so unfair. And you get that a lot with Black players, especially female Black players. That's why statistically females are voted out first.
Yeah, and I actually just even just to jump in there too for a second, I'm sure Grace, there's probably something that relates and ties in with all this. Like one thing that that just has been on my mind thinking of Survivor, and I know like one thing I appreciate about you, and I don't know if we'll have time to touch on it, but you did like Survival Challenge, which is a live reality game, which is really awesome. People should check out. And I've done a live reality Survivor Philadelphia,
Nice.
you know, as that game itself. And I feel like I experienced this, and I also hear from like actual Survivor players who've experienced like just people perceiving you or responding to you in ways that seem really harsh because of your identities. And I mean, in life, I could think of this, like even just witnessing this in school growing up at different points where you're like, okay, why is the Black kid always in trouble in the corner and being yelled at and picked on for doing the same things that everyone else is doing? And, you know, there's so many levels to that. But I guess I kind of want to ask, like, do you have any thoughts on how all of those identities and weights you talked about, but especially being like a queer Black woman and add in, you know, these other identities, like how do you think that's affected how people have perceived you? Do you think they've been fair in terms of like giving you grace, or harsher because of just like racism, homophobia, all of those other things that come up?
I think when I lived in Spain, it is a big question.
Yeah.
When I lived in Spain, my girlfriend spoke Spanish. My girlfriend at the time was Aaron's sister, and she spoke amazing Spanish, fluent. And so we moved to Spain confidently, but she really wanted me to like branch out on my own and try. And so there would be really big days where I'm in a different country. I don't speak this language. I can speak some French, but it's not translating too well because of culture shock. And now I'm out in public. I don't feel very safe. And the one person that could protect me, she has also like this life that she's trying to build and live. And I remember getting onto the metro one day. It's my first time riding the metro by myself. I am freaking out, sweating bullets. And as soon as I get on the metro, I see this little old lady, and she snatches her purse and like gasps. And I got so scared because in my mind, if somebody runs, you don't look for what they're running for, you run, right? This little old lady saw danger and she screamed, like it was audible. I felt it. And so as soon as she did it, I moved away and I also looked, but there was no one behind me. It was just me. And that stays with me, that moment, because it happens often. Just wandering around Canada backpacking at 5'11", and maybe sometimes not always looking like a female presenting 5'11", so a big Black man. I've had people move across the sidewalk. I've had people pull their children back. And so I think I have felt this in the real world so often. And Survivor, it really is a microcosm. It is just a reduced, boiled down percentage of what we're getting in the real world. It doesn't surprise me, people's reaction, but as a human that does have feelings, that does smile, it does still hurt in the same way that this little old lady honestly probably reduced her health, hurt herself in some way just because I exist and I am big and Black. So yeah, I think that a lot of it comes from perception, from stereotypes, and just like from passed down generational subconscious thought. I don't really think that everyone's bad. I don't think that there is like a quantitative, like you are bad, you are good, you are racist, you are not. I think that some people can really, really lean on that side of like, I am racist and I'm going to live in this. But a lot of people have not really had access or been around too many Black people. And the only idea of Black people they get is on TV. And what is that? The criminals. Why is the only person with a gun that's robbing the Black guy? Why? Anybody could rob the bank. And then we go to reality TV, and now you also villainize these Black players. So even in reality TV, so it's real, we're still bad guys. So yeah, I think that it goes further than just our season or this moment in time. It just really is a microcosm of the situation that we've been dealing with forever.
Yeah,
I'm so glad it came up because we turned off the recording last week, and I started talking about this exact thing, about how easy it is. You look at, there'll be two players who basically act the same way, and the person who gets vilified is the person of color, and the white person is seen as a strategist, as a you know, is almost like lauded for their performance.
Their beautiful mind. Yeah.
Right. They're like, that's how you play the game. And I think it's, you know, it's reality TV, but reality TV has always, since the beginning of the show, has been based on, you know, there's people that we root for. You're rooting for people, and you're rooting against people. And there are villains. Even like the first winner of the show is a queer villain, right? He comes, you know, so it's always been there, I think. And those unconscious bias, like, I think it is on white people to, like, when you're watching that TV show, to like question that first thought you have about like, oh, I don't like that person. It's like, why don't I like that person? And it's on us to do the work, because I think you're right that it's unconscious bias, but what we're creating is like real bias in the world for and conscious for folks who are affected by it, and it's almost like we could just like stroll on, you know, like, yeah, I don't like that person, or like, why aren't you smiling, without thinking that like you're putting so much work on you know, on you to respond to that situation, and now that's a conscious thing that you're thinking about and have to navigate through that, while this other person is unconsciously thinking about it. So it's not this, you know, yeah, anyway.
No, definitely. And I mean, I think it's very telling of everyone's going to get hate mail, anyone involved in TV. We're going to get hate mail. We're also going to get cute letters from 6-year-olds who admire you, right? So it's all have to be accepted because it's just kind of the role that we signed up for. But it's very telling in the hate mail kind of what the words are used, because that tells me where it's streaming from. The N-word has nothing to do with my gameplay. So why are you using it, you know? And so I think it is just telling of where we are in the world. And it hit me really hard after Survivor to go in as a very naive, super young, truly just there to play the game, 22-year-old, and then to receive so much hate for like the game as gameplay, I guess, in general. It really, my best friend flew to Portland, picked me up, and took me to Hawaii for 2 weeks and took my phone, because the amount of hate given to a stranger based on a highly edited TV show, I never could perceive as something that could happen from signing up to a game that I've always wanted to play since I was a kid. And so remembering that and flowing into this new show, I sat with my friends, and a part of going into this new show about the stability is having this home base and having friends that I can meet up with every Tuesday to have a drink or to have a blunt. And we were sitting and we were talking about stereotypes and how people will be portrayed, and how before I had no idea. This time I don't feel naive. I do feel older. I do feel more confident in my skin. You know, like, I am Black, I am queer, I am a veteran, I am all these things. They will not disappear. So either get over it or leave. And I feel that more confidently. And so going into this game, I wore all of these things almost as armor. Instead of in Survivor, I think I was hiding myself and not really like leaning in to the things that made me who I am. But I am these things. And if you are afraid of them, or if you don't like them, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then I am not the space that you should be around. And to accept that and to understand that, it really affected my gameplay. And it was, like I said, with the phone clearing and having more storage, I had so much more freedom just to move, because I do not worry about the perceptions or what people are going to say about me. I have the humans that know me, that love me, that trust me. And if we're good, I'm good. And past that, the hate mail no longer really makes me cry. I'm a super sensitive little Cancer, so it got me.
Yeah, I mean, just to like jump into like thinking about, and I'm glad that you mentioned like the hate mail too, and just acknowledge that, because I feel like there's levels to it with like season 39, and not going to go super in depth with obviously the things that happened on the season, but one thing I want to reference is just the fact that like, and you've done such a great job of talking about this in other podcasts and places where you've been able to kind of share your voice and perspective. Like, I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle to understand the idea of you're put in this scenario where you are one of 16 or 18 or 20 people who's like, who has a chance at winning $1 million, which could change your life, change your family's life, turn around generational curses and issues,
Mhm.
do things that turn things around for you as well. And like, I think that the thing that's, well, maybe just like to directly talk about it, I remember watching season 39 and coming from a background, especially at the time, doing a lot of work in like the sexual assault and supporting survivors world. And that was like the season that made me want to actually get into podcasting. Like, I sent a message to Rob Sesterino, like, Rob, let me get on and talk about this, like from the perspective of just bringing in that informed view of things. And the reason I bring that up though is just because I understand like the level of like pain that people could feel at times. But, and there's the saying like hurt, you know, I think that there's this idea like that, you know, when we're hurt, we do want to hurt people. We do want to take you down, Missy, if we're hurt around something. And I think, I hope that people could show grace wherever it's possible, just to folks when it comes to how they're portrayed on the show, how the decisions people make in fighting for $1 million freaking dollars, because none of us really knows where we would be and what we would do in that. And so that was just like a general thought I had, and I'm sure I could go on and on, but I don't know if there's anything you have in relation to that.
Definitely. I think this is another reason why I went into media school too, because storytelling is so compelling, and everything that you add into storytelling adds to how people take away what you were giving. And you don't necessarily have to give them in chronological order or give it in a way that is concise or true. And at 22 years old, I don't think I understood that. I thought that we would all go out there and live this experience, and they're going to show that exact experience. If I'm dancing in the rain every night naked, I'm expecting to be shown on Survivor dancing in the rain and naked. And if that doesn't fit a storyline or what's going to generate views or clicks, it may not necessarily fit. And for the tribal where we got to sit down and talk with Jeff, Kelly had been voted out. And for me, as someone in the military has such a high sexual assault rate. And so we've dealt with it quite a bit. Sexual assault and suicide are very, very big in the military, and they're taken extremely seriously. So as someone coming out of the military, I felt and seen these things pretty up close. And so in the game, when we were at Tribal, sitting with Jeff, I asked him, and obviously this is where editing and TV comes in, because we can air what we want to air and we cannot what we don't. But I remember asking him, if this is a real situation in which you can give us all the details from every side, could we please stop this game that is meaningless? Because if something is happening right now in the jungle that is making us all feel extremely unsafe, we would love for you to give us the details instead of using it for a plot or for a storyline to create a headline before season 40 comes out. And we had a huge, huge talk about it. All of us chimed in. Kelly wasn't allowed to speak, which felt very unfair.
Yeah.
Why silence her voice when we're asking you for the truth? And we had a lot of discussions off camera as well. So to see how they edited everything together, where for me in the game, it was as clear as Kelly had an issue. However, Kelly really wanted to vote Missy out. And so the vote was me. It was always going to be me, but she wanted me to feel calm and relaxed. It's a compliment to make the vote me. However, the gameplay that she used, when I realized that she was using that gameplay, I simply turned it back on her and voted her out. So the exact gameplay by two individuals, one's Black So having all of that in mind and seeing how it was turning into this big, big thing, it really felt just very harmful, because it didn't make sense. If you would have voted me out using this strategy, would everything just have been fine? So that used to haunt me quite a bit after the game, and getting to see how it was portrayed and how things were mixed and matched and told in a way that wasn't truthful to our experience as a whole, all of us, all 20 of us. It felt very bad. And I think that's something that I had to grow up and realize, that when you sign away, our contract clearly says we can represent you in any and all ways that we deem fit. If the storyline fits to make you a rabbit, then you know what? You're going to be a rabbit that season. And so that was a part of me having to, it was a hard lesson to learn, to go through. Like I said, we went to Maui and I just had to escape and like really sit for 2 weeks. But much like my brain tumor, I think every hard thing in life is a lesson, and I think that you can take something away from it. And going into my next game, knowing that stereotypically Black people are not really going to be represented too well, I have this quote in my mind from Corinne, who also lives here in Denver. Villains do have more fun. And so for the next game, I went into it with a more joyful and comedic view of how I would play the game. And I'm really excited to watch it back. I think those that hate me will continue to hate me. And I think that those that love me will probably continue to love me. And we'll see a little bit more comedy in the pain this time. But yeah, it was difficult to go through all that and to learn that, but I'm happy about it.
Yeah, one thing I would just point out too, and then I'll hand it over to Grace. Just an observation is that our conversation with Hai is echoing in my head, because in talking about the dynamic between Hai and Romeo and how Hai was feeling in their season when they were talking about their queer identities, and then it's like, wait, is this gameplay? Like, what's going on? It reminds me actually of a conversation from last year in the Pride is Spoken, when we started the podcast with Zeke, where it's just this like Survivor is this like environment that is not really fully conducive to humanity. And like, there's so many things we love about it, but like I also feel like it's this thing where it's like very hard to balance being like a human with being a player who goes in with the goal of winning $1 million to walk away with that. And then there ends up being like all these really complicated, like deeply like traumatic entwined things with the experience. And it's like, I wish that it could just like that they could be like, okay, let's stop this. Let's hit pause on the show. Let's hit pause on the game. Let's actually make space for the humans in this. But that's much easier said than done, and I don't have a solution to that. But,
well, and not what they signed us up to do. At the end of the day, we are signing up for a life like this adventure, once in a lifetime. They're signing up to make a TV show and to make money. That's just like, I think the realism of it that 22 baby-faced me didn't understand. I thought that it was like this really cool lottery ticket and we're all like at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but no, like it's a job. They are showing up.
All the kids died at the chocolate factory, so it's actually it's not a bad metaphor actually.
You're right. But like it really is. It's a business. It's a corporation at the end of the day.
Well, I'm interested because you talked about you graduated from media school, and I see you talked about wanting to run a game and understanding all the different pieces on the chessboard. Is this something that you had in mind before you went on Survivor, or did Survivor and maybe any other experience sort of propel you? And is that where you want to take sort of your media your degree is in sort of this space, or is there other media you're also looking to create moving forward?
Great question. I think any media that I create is going to represent minority representation. I think we just need that. We have a space for that, or I guess we don't have a space for it, and we need to fill it. And I'm not sure exactly where I want to go with it. I've always been a gamer. I have up until the survival challenge. Competition for me is breathing, okay? If you challenge me, I don't even drink beer. If you challenge me right now to chug a beer, me versus you, I will sit here and drown in that beer to make
All right,
sure
it's
that
very
I
early, but let's do it. Let's do it.
But like, I really had to learn that's cool, and I understand that trauma can come in any and all facets. And for me, competitive trauma really just took over my life. And the reason competitive trauma took over my life is because growing up in Decatur, Georgia, at my age, at 28 years old, you don't get to leave Georgia and buy a house and live by yourself. You stay very like below the socioeconomic status line. No one in my family has gone to college. And so that competitive trauma, that desire to win, is because as a child, it was not about fun and medals. It was about getting out. It was about actual survival.
Yeah.
And so I became very good at basketball, and I became a dog in basketball, not because I want to knock somebody to the ground, but because either I'm going to knock you to the ground and get a free scholarship to college, or you're going to swear on me and I'm going to stay in like literal hell. And so I don't think that people really understand when we talk about competitive trauma that it is just as big as any other trauma. And so I think it took most of my life to start working backwards from that trauma, to not enter in a game and not feel like it's survival. It could be a game of Monopoly, and my mind is still thinking win or you have to go back to Georgia. And so it's taken it pretty much up until the survival challenge to get to that place. And getting to play in the survival challenge was super cool. It was so much fun. And while there, I found out that I was leaving for Fight to Survive. And so my mind clicked really fast about, I need to brush up on mentally what it feels like to live in the jungle, mentally what it feels like to starve again. And I had a really open and honest talk with my tribe, something I would never do in a game. And I told them, I really need you all to vote me out. I really need to go home. I need to prepare for this opportunity to change my family's life. And even though like that was a competition, I have never quit anything in my entire life. It just, in my mind, it was so simple and so easy, and it really brought tears to my eyes because that is full release from my trauma. I don't need to win every single game. I can pick and choose things that I may need to do or to win. But getting to make that choice and express that to my tribe, and they could have kept me in the game. Keeping an alumni in the game for your strategy at that point in time, so beneficial. But they really like allowed me that freedom. And it was just like a really big growth moment. And I wanted to say that before. What was the rest of your question? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, well, just very quick. I just want to say it is in the fine print of the rules of Monopoly that if you do lose, you do have to move to Georgia. So
yeah, it is.
In very fine print.
That's why I'm throwing tables. If we never finish the game, I never have to move.
Oh my gosh, that might be nice. Maybe I should play Monopoly more.
No, don't. You're gonna have to move to. I mean, Georgia's great.
I don't know. I don't know about any place these days, but that's a whole.
It's not.
Denver's great.
About Georgia. Yeah, I think any place is great where you are in a great mindset. I think if you're in a bad mindset, that taints and colors everything you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like that was like a very big switch for me to be able to go into something just for the fun of it, and it really has flown into the rest of my life. And I think it freed up a lot of space again to go into Fight to Survive.
Yeah, I think the question. I was like, did Matt ask the question or I asked the question? Which was basically like, what type of media do you want to be making, basically, moving forward, and whether like Survivor impacted.
I think media-wise, I would love to get into some type of game making gameplay.
Oh.
I just played in my friend's new org. It's called Adapt, and it is a mashup of a bunch of different game shows, but it is for the queer community. And it is so fun. There was 26 of us out there of the entire Alphabet Mafia, Alphabet Rainbow. We were all out there, and I've never played in a game like that where the representation was us. And
3 weeks in a row where the idea of, well, actually we've pivoted a little bit, but we suggested an all queer edition of Survivor. I believe High last week thought maybe one season was going to be straights versus bis versus queers.
Oh wow, they would never. That's awful press. That's awful press.
Pretty bad. I mean, depending on who wins.
Yeah. That's true. I think an entire season of the queer community would be something very beautiful to work towards.
I agree.
And we do now have someone, a fan, made a really cool graphic of all of us, and there is so many.
Yeah.
So you could easily feel, you could have 3 or 4, you could have a whole queer arc. So there's definitely enough queer representation to have a couple of tribes, and that'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm. Completely agreed. And yeah, love that you're like interested in creating, almost like building your own oh my gosh, whoa, I'm seeing it all come back together. You have your own home, you're building your own space, but literally like figuratively, metaphorically, also building your own house when it comes to like the media and representation and having identities out there. Like that means so much to me as someone who focuses on storytelling too, and media and all of that. Just like that we are not represented. And one thing that people like, you know, cisgender, straight, white people won't be able to understand and wrap their heads around is just like how detrimental that is. And you spoke about this earlier, like all of the weights that we carry to show up anywhere, where in a sense it's like we're, you know, we have all these superpowers, so to speak, but also showing up with these disadvantages in the space. And it's like just having that representation and having you creating, whether it's a game or other types of shows, like that will go such a long way for other people seeing that they belong and being represented, which I think like in the context of the Pride has spoken and celebrating queer Survivor players, like that's what it's about. Like not just being celebrated by the community and by Survivor, the actual production, but like doing it yourself too, which I think is also really inspirational. That like we need to, I mean, that's what this podcast is too. Like we created this space because it wasn't out there. So
awesome.
I think too, I think for people who, you know, there's this idea that like you talked about how there's so little representation out there. I think it's increasing every year as like people, as like it's there's more access to be able to do it, to create shows and content and all of this stuff. But I also think it's important for I say this a lot of like make sure you're diversifying your like Instagram feed and the content you're watching, like actively choosing to watch things that are not just what is being fed to you and searching it out. It's it's easier than ever to find it as well, in terms of like it's easier, more access for people to be creating this stuff, but it's also easier to find it. And so diversifying like the type of content you're watching to basically like expose yourself to these different groups and culture, and to be, you know, understanding, so you don't have these like it's being aware of your unconscious bias.
Oh, so well said by both of you. Me and my therapist Sherry, shout out to Sherry, we love her.
Shout out to Sherry.
Yeah. So we've been saying that as I built this house, so will I grow. And it has been so transformational in my life to complete the entertainment system, which is in the main living room of the upstairs unit. That entertainment system with the built-in fireplace, I did all of that with these hands, and these hands the day before that could not do that. And to see that I can complete that task, what other goal can I reach? And so as the house is being built, I do see myself growing. And in the backyard, when we laid the turf and built the fence, every single panel put onto the fence, I'm telling you, is another boost in my self-esteem and my confidence and my self-love. And as I see the house transform, I can clearly see these benchmarks of my growth and where I'm going and where I've been. And it has been the coolest thing to do. It's just been the best thing. It's actually been really the best thing in my entire life. And my birthday's coming up, and I haven't been able to celebrate my birthday. I've never really felt like it's like that big of a deal. I think it's just like growing up with not much and not really having the resources. And so I'd always be like, just another day. Well, it's not. It's my mother's birthday, okay? And I feel like with the pasties arc, with the house arc, this birthday is something that I had a dream, and I was like, I'm going to host the Missy Channel Games.
Yes.
The Missy Channel Games are going to be this just like whimsical day of fun where we all come out. We all love the Disney Channel Games. We love seeing Dylan and Cole Sprouse and the Jonas Brothers dressed up. And we're going to come out and we're going to play all these games, and they're going to be as competitive as my little traumatized competitive heart needs. And then after that, we're going to have just a beautiful backyard party. We're going to send a shout out to Sherry because she made all these people in my life possible. And we're going to celebrate something that has never really been huge. And it's crazy that it lines up to the house's birthday because I am the house and the house is me.
Wow.
So yeah, it's wild. Life is beautiful.
Wow.
And you know what? It's beautiful how you lean into so much of like who you are, and even just like acknowledging, like, yeah, and you know, I think a lot of us struggle to go there because it's not social, but like leaning into all the things that you are and the houses that you're building and you know the struggles and the traumas along the way, like all of it makes you who you are, all of it makes each of us who we are, but we could still thrive and grow and build something. Oh my gosh, I feel like a motivational speaker, Grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll let Missy be the motivational speaker as we sort of
Oh.
wrap things up. One thing we like to do is like, do you have any messages for the queer Survivor fans? You know, or queer folks out there listening.
Yes. Man, I think everyone says it, but be who you are. Don't be ashamed of who you are. You are beautiful. Everything about you is amazing. And the more you show that to the world, the more that others will gravitate towards you that vibrate with that energy. I think the more you give it, the more you'll receive it. Love for me is a really big thing. Tell someone that is queer that you love them. It is Pride Month. For Pride Month, go out and celebrate. Please be safe. Have so much fun. This weekend is Pride weekend. And if you see me out there in pasties, please give me a hug. To all my queer, lovely humans, be yourself, be who you are, be so present. Tell someone queer you love them. The more that we show who we are and give it to the world, the more that energy is going to vibrate with others and they will find you. And there'll be a big old gaggly gaze around you, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. Take care of each other this weekend. Have so much fun. And if you see me and I'm in pasties, please come give me a hug.
All right, everybody. Evvie, that was our conversation with Missy. And thank you so much, Missy, for just being part of the Pride Has Spoken, for sharing your truth, for being so open, for talking about so many topics, ones that are very light, like the pasties and pastries, ones that are very involved and deeper. And I think it just represents so much of the LGBTQ plus or QIA plus experience. But Evvie, you know, we'll be back next week with, oh my God, it makes me so sad. I'm tearing up. I think it's our last interview for this Pride Month.
It is the last of this month, but as you know, the Pride Has Spoken might be gone for a little after next episode, but not forever. And I just do want to say, like, thank you so much to Missy. Thank you to all the survivors who have come on the show so far and who will come on in the future. Like, these interviews, as you all know from just listening to it, you touch on a lot more stuff, a lot more personal stuff than people would often share, even in the context of being on a reality show. So if you're listening to this, we know that Missy didn't get the love she deserved always during her season. So if you're listening to this and you enjoyed this interview, please send Missy a little love on social media. And Matt and Grace for being amazing interviewers and just wonderful queer role models for us all. And it's just, these interviews are a lot. So if you're listening, please share the love back so we know that that you're listening.
Yeah, and I think like I love that, Evvie, and I think I just always say no pun intended, to like give people grace and also just to celebrate them. Like, this is a celebration, and Survivor players will hear for decades and decades to come, as long as the show is on streaming platforms, about things on the show and things they didn't do well and the criticism and negativity. Let's not be that. Let's show people love. And Missy is at the Missy Byrd, in case you want to check her out, follow her, and get in on that action. I don't know what that means. That's that should be a queer thing. But anyway, if you want
Bird with a Y, as
Bird,
you know.
Bird with a Y.
Yeah.
Yes, the Missy Byrd with a Y. And yes, also, if you want to get in on the action of the Pride Has Spoken shirts, I need to figure out which color I'm going to buy next. But if you are listening and want to figure out which one you want to get, you go to robhaswebsite.com/pride shirt, or just go to robhaswebsite.com, go to the shop, and the Pride Has Spoken shirt shirt is there. Shout out to everyone who's posting about the shirt, wearing it. Make sure to tag me, tag Evvie, tag Grace, use hashtag the pride is spoken to let us know about it.
And give us
Evvie,
suggestions of where we should donate the money to this season. So if you know
yes.
of a cool, rad, queer organization, especially one that's fighting against anti-trans bills right now, we're really trying to donate something good there. So if you know anything like that, tweet it at us, tag us in it, and we would love to do that.
Definitely. And I have some ideas, seeing some organizations that are focused on, for instance, there's one I came across that is focused on like queer and trans therapists of color, which is, I think it might be literally the Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network as one example, but there's so many other great organizations. So let us know who we should donate these proceeds to. And Evvie, where can the people find you?
People can find me at Evvie Jagoda on Instagram and Twitter. I do have a TikTok that is currently hacked with that same handle, although I have small movement on hopefully getting it back. Hopefully.
Oh my gosh. Wait, could you talk about this publicly without
just that the helpful friends at CVS sent me helped me figure out the right thing to email to hopefully get some hopefully get it back. And so
you have an email address.
I have an email address. But if you search the handle at Evvie Jagoda and you see that there's a weird picture on it now, just go ahead and give a little report of that on TikTok. Can we get it back by the end of Pride Month? Let's find out.
Stressing me out.
Yes, it's fine though. It's okay. And if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the coverage that me and Asia and Mary did about the Queer Ultimatum season, please check that out on the Love at First Sight feed in the reality wrap-ups here on Robin's podcast. It was such a fun series. I feel like I'm still seeing people talking about that show. So yeah, check it out.
Yes, and if you want to find me, I'm Matt Scott GW on all platforms. And Grace shouted this out last month. I'm on the Wrestling Wrap Up with Mari Forth, who's at Mari Talks Too Much. That's two, like the number 2, in case you want to follow my phenomenal co-host there. But we actually did an episode that was called Pride in Pro Wrestling, a special edition of the Wrestling Wrap Up podcast, where, as Grace mentioned, we had the number 1 gay wrestler in the world, Billy Dixon. We had Victoria Mother Effin' Cage, who is a huge wrestling fan and drag queen doing phenomenal work out of Orlando, which the struggles in Florida these days. And of course, Grace was there, Mari was there, and just such a great conversation. We're gonna have Rob Sesternino and Chappelle on this upcoming episode, and also I'll keep you all updated in regard to my show Pod Friends, where of course I interviewed Evvie, I interviewed Grace. If you haven't already listened to these interviews, it's not too late. Go back, subscribe, robhasawebsite.com/podfriendsfeed. Like, we literally have our own feed. Subscribe. It's like, what are you waiting for? And one other thing I'll just shout out, and we were talking a little bit about live reality games in the context of this interview with Missy, because Missy did something called Survival Challenge and looked at Survivor Philadelphia, not my season of it, but looked at it before going on it. And so if you're interested in being like a queer Survivor player, but in Philadelphia and not in Fiji, and for 14 hours instead of 26 hours, like, shoot me a message, because the Survivor Philly casting and all of that will come out for a game happening I believe this year, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to announce that. Hopefully I can next week. But yes, excited about who we're chatting with next week.
You should all be really excited. You're going to be impressed.
I won't spoil it. I won't spoil it. No hints either. No hints. And, here we are. It's still Pride Month. And I guess we should just say happy Pride. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Happy Pride.
And thank you, because the Pride has spoken.